The plight of these camel jockeys is only part of Answer Bernie's mission. Putting an end to the practice and saving those involved are also his priorities. We focus on those ends in the second part of our story from the UAE.
The child jockeys here have one thing in common. They all come from somewhere far away. For many of them, that place is 2,000 miles to the east, in the third world slums of Bangladesh. It's a country as poor as the Emirates are rich. The only resource they have in abundance is people. And that is precisely why the smugglers, Pakistani and Bangladeshi smugglers who traffic in little boys, come to desperate villages like this one, where they have a choice: steal a boy or buy one.
Parents are selling their children?
Yes.
In places like Bangladesh?
Yeah,
and
Bangladesh, Pakistan. Because they are very poor.
They're selling because they're very poor.
Very poor. They are dying without food, so they need some money for their children.
But often that money never comes. Once the smugglers get the boys, they usually pose as the parents themselves and pocket the small salaries that some of the jockeys are paid. And there's not much the villagers here can do about it.
I want to go over there and get my sons back, but I don't know where they are. I just know that they raced the camels.
Her name is Layla, and this is her fourth son, the only one she still has. Layla lost her first 3 boys after smugglers took the family to Dubai on the promise of work. Once they got there, the smugglers took the boys to the camel camp and had her sent home.
I will not give this son over to camel jockey work. I gave my first sons, but now I know that they are in trouble. I want to bring back the other sons from that work, bring them back in my own house.
But the odds are not in her favor. Even the jockeys who do make it out of the camps often don't know who their parents are or where they came from. So here in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, volunteers run a shelter where they raise and educate camel jockey orphans. Most were injured too badly or grew too big to be of any more use as jockeys. All of them are getting some sort of rehabilitation for what they went through at the camps. These boys are rehearsing a play about their former lives. Other boys have other ways of coping with the memories.
Here, the camels are racing. One kid falls from the back and the camera steps on the child. The child is yelling, "Save me."
Shojib has lived here for years. He can't remember where he came from, but he'll never forget where he's been.
I have this mark on my shoulder. The trainers burned it with a scalding iron rod, as I didn't prepare their meal properly because I was very sleepy.
Places like this one are rare. Countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan are too poor and often too corrupt to come to the camel jockey's defense. That burden is left to richer, more powerful countries like the United States. The U.S. State Department, which monitors human trafficking, used to pressure the Emirates over the camel jockey issue. But that changed after the UAE restated its ban against child jockeys in 2002.
Many countries are improving their anti-trafficking efforts. The United Arab Emirates is the first government to ban the use of underage, underweight jockeys in the camel racing industry.
The State Department declared the problem all but solved, and just 4 months ago, in its annual trafficking report, the department hailed the UAE as a model for the region in its excellent protection of children from camel jockey work. So we asked Colin Powell's top deputy on human trafficking, Ambassador John Miller, to take a look at what we'd seen.
When you look at that, what do you think?
It's a very powerful video. And it is appalling that in this day and age, this kind of slavery goes on.
And you don't run from the word slavery.
No. If somebody is held against their will and they're put in these inhuman conditions, yes, we're talking about slavery, the slave trade.
If that's the case, how does this department, how does the State Department issue a report that says that the UAE, United Arab Emirates, is a model for the region and they're doing excellent work in this area? That is completely, with all due respect, totally untrue.
Listen, we don't apologize for having incomplete information. When we get new information, we use that information. This kind of visual evidence is the kind of evidence that we can follow up on. What about this? What is your answer to this? What is going on? Is this true? Isn't it true? If it's true, what are you doing about it?
Impressive report.
But the State Department's decision to back off the UAE a couple of years ago came around the time the administration was courting friends in the Gulf to help in the war with Iraq. That included heavy lobbying of UAE leaders, especially the man in charge of their military, Defense Minister Sheikh Mohammed, the very same Sheikh Mohammed who spends millions racing camels. Today, the UAE is a key staging ground for American forces in the Persian Gulf.
And the fact that this is our staunchest military ally at a time when we need a military ally in the Persian Gulf, that has nothing to do with a report that says that they're doing so well in
I'll
this
tell
area?
you, what has to do with the report is when you have 5 or 6 people covering the whole world. That has something to do with the report. But I will tell you this, when we get information from what I know of the President and the Secretary of State's feelings about the slavery issue, the fact that a government is a friend or an ally is not going to keep this government from speaking out, and it isn't going to keep me from speaking out.
But Ansar Bernie decided not to wait for diplomacy. In August, 2 months after he'd taken us through the desert, he returned to the camps, hoping to sneak out as many boys as possible and take them back to their home countries.
Whenever I saw any child in trouble, I saw my own child over there. And when you will feel that this is your child, you will sell your blood and you will try to help the boy.
Is your life in danger?
Sure it is. Sure it is. There are so many attacks on my home, at my office, at my vehicle. I received several telephone calls that you will be in problem, just stop it, and if you will try to rescue another children, you will be in trouble, and like this. So it's a risk on your life, but to save the children, you can take any risk.
On his return to the Emirates, Bernie looked for some of the boys he'd already met, and he found this one in an Abu Dhabi hospital. His name is Shaquille, and he'd had his stomach split open after he fell off of a camel. Shaquille wasn't ready to leave the hospital, but working around the clock, Bernie and a few supporters found nearly 24 other boys. They were driven out of the camps and shuttled into different getaway cars.
We rescued this boy, and we are just transferring to another car. Yes. बस अब जो भी रास्ता मिले ना, रुकना कहीं नहीं है, बस ये अबू धाबी से फौरी हमने बाहर निकलना है बस.
Bernie's team rounded up 23 boys in all Pakistanis, and took them to a safe house near Dubai. Inside, while volunteers prepared exit visas, the boys played, like little boys do, for the first time in years. For one of them, 7-year-old Nadim, who still bore the bruises of abuse, the rescue came not a moment too soon.
It's difficult to look at these tapes and not, I don't think I'm being too dramatic here, and not weep at what you see. Has that ever happened with you when you see
Several times, so, because I'm a human being. I'm a human being too.
It's difficult for you to see what you see?
It is difficult. Sorry. I have a pain. I always have tears in my eyes because they are human being too. Treat them like a human being.
Just days after the rescue, under the cover of darkness, Bernie took the boys to asylum at the Pakistani consulate. The next day, they were back in Karachi, where Bernie showed the boys their homeland for the first time in years. After working the phones and tracking down leads, he took some of them back to the villages they had left behind as toddlers.
I don't want to save few children. I don't want to save dozens of children. I want to save all the children who are working on slave as child camel jockeys in a miserable, miserable condition. So I am asking the world to help me. Help me to stop it. Help us to stop it.
Bernie, Ambassador Miller says we can follow up on visual evidence. Does history suggest they will, or they'll do nothing?
Well, first let me say the visual evidence he's talking about is from today. This is
current footage. There's no
current
stock
footage.
stuff.
It was shot just a few months ago. It's current stuff. I got the impression that Ambassador Miller is a real straight shooter. He seemed like an eminently decent guy. He's already spoken to the ambassador in Washington from the Emirates, and I think that the State Department is serious about this.
You correctly focused on officials in the UAE, but what about officials in places like Bangladesh and Pakistan? Are they complicit? Are they apathetic? Are they ignorant?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. They send a lot of their adult workers to the UAE to work, and then they make money and send money home. For a desperately poor country like Bangladesh, if they make an issue of this, what happens if the UAE, and I'm saying what if the UAE says, don't send any of your workers here? So they don't do nearly as much as they might have if they were a wealthier country.
Final note, Answer Bernie is asking the world to stop it. How? What might work?
You know what usually works? Money usually works. The UAE is trying to become